so glad that Nate has given me this opportunity to speak again. I absolutely love coming up here and speaking to everybody. So if you know me, you know that I love to do research. Not like research on like projects, but definitely for other things. Like before we went to Belize for my freshman year mission trip for spring break, I already knew like the whole hotel, like inside and out, like the Wi-Fi password, the menu, how the rooms looked, how many people were in each room. I just knew it all, right? Like I love researching. So the other day, I was just going through my Snapchat stories, and then I went down to like the Discover thing. And normally I don't like go down there much because it's normally just like messed up stuff. But I saw this thing and it was like, you would never believe these Photoshop fails. And me being myself, like research freak, was like, okay, let's look. And here are some of the ones that I saw. So this is the first one. I don't know if you noticed, but they have no legs. And then the next one, this guy has 2 arms. So there's this one, and then there's one up there too. And then this girl has 3 arms, 1, 2, and 3, right there. And then, okay, this girl's messed up. So she has a piece of hair up there. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like detached. Her top is not it's not attached. Neither is her necklace. She has an extra ear. I don't know if you can see it, but she has an extra ear. Obviously a hand that wasn't, there's no other person, so I don't know where that hand came from.
Photoshop.
But, yeah.
Hey, these guys don't know Photoshop.
I think that's all the pictures. Yeah, okay. So these obviously show like pretty funny mistakes that people can make, right? And it also shows everybody makes mistakes, just like Miley Cyrus once said. And we all know that, blah, 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 blah. But it also shows how much of an airbrush society we live in. I do Photoshop at school, and I know it pretty well. And in order to make these type of mistakes, you have to be making some pretty big changes. So you can't just be making this like big mistake and then be doing this like tiny little change. No, if you have like an extra hand or like a whole like top is like detached, you're obviously changing the picture in a certain way. So looking at this gives us this like airbrushed look on everything. And we just have this expectation that we have to look like them, or we have to act like them in magazines or celebrities or anything that we see in the media these days. And this just puts this untouchable, fake expectation on ourselves. And everything that we tell ourselves is, oh, I have to look like that person, or I have to act like that person, I have to do these things. And it just gives this fake expectation. When we all look in the mirror, I think we all kind of look in the mirror and we're like, oh, criticizing every little thing about us, right? I think we've all been there at one point or another. I always say that my like arms are like so long, like they're so long. But I hate how long my arms are. I hate how pronounced my collarbones are. So I just normally like try to like cover them up. But like when I'm looking in the mirror, I look at those things. I also look at my failures and my mistakes. So then I go into the day thinking, oh, my arms are so long, nobody's gonna like that. Or, oh, I am just gonna fail today, I'm just gonna be a failure, I'm gonna make all these mistakes. And that's how I go into my day. So when you look in the mirror, what do you see? Or actually, what do you perceive? Because we all perceive things differently. So when you look in the mirror, what do you perceive about yourself? Do you see yourself as this wonderful, amazing, beautiful, amazing person? I know I said that twice. Do you see yourself as that, or do you see yourself as just your flaws and your mistakes and your failures? I want you to remember that. I know I'm saying it pretty early, but I want you to remember what you're thinking right now, because I'm going to bring it up later on. So this week is the second week of our Goliath Must Fall series, and I absolutely love this series because the story of David and Goliath is one of my favorite in the Bible. Yeah, it's one of the most popular, but it's also one of my favorites. And last week, Nate talked about the story of Goliath and David in the Bible, and he also talked about defeating the Goliath of fear. This week, I'm talking about defeating the Goliath of rejection. So first, I'm going to start with a story about my boy JC in the Bible, and we're going to look at Matthew 3:17. But before we read that, let me give you a little bit of backstory on what's happening. At this moment, Jesus is getting baptized by a dude named John. And we think of Jesus right now as this like amazing guy who like did all these miracles and like changed people's lives and like turned water into wine and like did all these things. But at this point in the Bible, he has literally done nothing. Like, none of those things, he hasn't done any of them. All he's done is talk to people, which is great, but all he's done is talk to people. He hasn't done any of those miracles that we all know him for now. And John is baptizing Jesus, and Jesus is under the water, and in the Bible it says, as he comes up, the heavens open up, and in Matthew 3:17 it says, that a voice from heaven said, "This is my dearly loved son who brings me great joy." So obviously we figure that this is God talking to Jesus as he's coming out of the water getting baptized. And I think a lot of us are thinking, okay, like God is like Jesus' dad, and like parents like love their kids, but like he doesn't love me that way. Like I have to like do things first. But that's not true. We're all sons and daughters of God, and he loves us no matter what. And we don't have to do a single thing, not anything. Just being here, just being us, just being ourselves is all that we need to do. And that's what we really need to embrace. In order to defeat the Goliath of rejection, I've narrowed it down to 4 easy steps. The first one is what I just started to explain. It's knowing that God accepts you. Psychologists tell us that one of the most powerful forces in humanity is acceptance. We all crave it. And I see some heads nodding. I mean, yeah, we all know that we just want to be accepted wherever we are, whether it's at school or here or anywhere. We just want to be accepted, and we just run away from rejection, and we just don't want to feel that. We just want to be accepted by the people around us. Some of us will do things that we don't want to do just to be accepted. Some of us will not do things that we want to do because we want to be accepted, or we won't say things or stand up for things just because we crave that acceptance. And I think a lot of this is because we were rejected at some point, and we were just stung by the sting of rejection, and we don't want to feel that anymore. I think that's why a lot of us want to start running from it, because we just know that it's bad. But as you saw in this story that I told before, God loves and accepts us. So you have to embrace that. You have to know that God accepts you, and you don't have to care about any other people's acceptance but his, because he accepts you, and that's all that matters. And now, like, you kind of know that, right? So you can, like, walk into a room like, oh yeah, you know, like, the one true king accepts me, you know, like, all cool and stuff. But now you have to kind of, like, spread the love almost. So it's a WWJCD moment. What would JC do? He would accept them, so you go and accept them. If it says in Romans 15:7 that therefore accept each other just as Christ has accepted you. So God has accepted us. So we have to go and show that love everywhere and just accept people for who they are, just like he is. But we all know that not necessarily everyone follows by the rules or does certain things like that. So we know that people aren't always going to do that, and we're not always going to do that either, because we're not perfect like God is. So we just have to overcome this Goliath of rejection by immersing ourselves in the fact that God has made us uniquely, beautifully, intentionally, purposely, and wonderfully. In Psalm 139:14, it says that for we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We're made by God. So we just have to immerse ourselves in that and just know that he has accepted us. So we don't have to ever fear rejection again, because the one true king has accepted us already. I mean, why would we ever want to fear rejection or want more acceptance if we already are accepted by the one Most High? So the second step to defeating this Goliath is accepting yourself. So now you accept God, but now you have to accept yourself. And I think a lot of us think, oh, okay, so we want to be accepted by others, but then all we do is we just reject ourselves. You know, we don't accept ourselves, and that doesn't make any sense. And sorry to break it to you, but looking in the mirror and just picking out every little thing, that is not accepting yourself. It just doesn't make sense why we want that from other people and not from us. And I think that sometimes we think that acceptance is just dealing with what we've got. I mean, like, okay, so I have long arms, I guess I'll just deal with it, you know, like, fine. But really, we have to gratefully receive what we have been given, and then we have to faithfully and with determination use those things. So, okay, so I have long arms, so this is kind of a weird example, but like I can like reach things or different things like that. I find ways to use what I've been given, and I gratefully accept those. I'm not just like dealing with the fact that I have them, I'm loving them and I'm thankful for them. Desiring what others have may feel more natural. I think a lot of us think that all the time. We're like, okay, we just want to be like that person. We just want to be like this person. But those people that we look up to most likely have accepted themselves already, because they're so confident in themselves and they already love themselves that they're not looking at anybody else, and they're just super confident. And that's why we want to be like them, and that's why so many people admire them. Many of us struggle because we don't want to accept the unique thing in our personality, or our circumstances, or our family origin, or whatever has been handed to us by God. But then we have to learn to accept ourselves and be life-giving leaders. And just like Justin Bieber said, you gotta learn to love yourself. And I know how that sounds. I know a lot of you are like, no, like me last. And I want you to know who you're talking to. This is probably something that I struggle with so much. I'm normally like, okay, so I'm like in the back of the line, and then like all these people are like way in front of me. If I make a list of things to do, it's what others need done first, and then it's what I need done. I always put myself last, it's never me first. And I always think of it kind of like selfish, putting myself first. So I always thought, oh, I can't accept myself. I have to accept others, because that's selfish and that's like anti-spiritual. It just feels different. But the truth of the matter is that it's one of the most spiritual things you can do. It's one of the most spiritual things that can happen in life and in leadership today. If you embrace your unique, God-given self and go, thank you, Lord, I'm going to accept what you have made me to be, then you will give a full life, full of acceptance and full of not fearing rejection. The third step to defeating the Goliath of rejection is to stop chasing other people's uniqueness. I think a lot of times we don't want to accept what we are and how unique we are, so then we look at other people's stuff and we're like, oh my goodness, that's so cool. I wish I was like them. And social media right now really hurts this, with like Instagram themes or like different comments, or how we all put this like highlight reel onto Instagram, onto Snapchat, onto any social media out there. And we just want to be like them. What if I had that career? What if I was that successful? And like, I think a lot of us are like, okay, I can be like that if I just like do this, do that. No, you can't. We don't have that uniqueness. We're not them. We have a different path. And you're like, oh, but I really wish that I prayed for it. Listen, we're going to grow. Everyone will grow. And everyone will grow in their own uniqueness. You won't grow in somebody else's uniqueness. If you're in somebody else's uniqueness, you'll actually stay where you are or back up. So we have to learn how to be leaders and to accept ourselves and to accept God and to be ourselves. Because we can't accept ourselves if we're chasing after other people's uniqueness. My lane over here, up here, is very different than anybody's lane out here. For example, Brianna right here is sitting in the front row, right? She's sitting, and it's like a packed row. And if I were to go sit where she is, and if I was to go into her path, she wouldn't have a seat. And then also nobody would be speaking up here. And she didn't plan on speaking up here because it wasn't part of her journey, it wasn't part of her path, it's not in her lane. So she couldn't speak up here. We're in different lanes, so we can't intersect like that. I can't be where she is, and she couldn't be where I am, because we have different journeys and different paths and different lives. So stop chasing other people's uniqueness, because we just have to embrace our uniqueness. Because if we embrace our uniqueness, then other people will embrace their uniqueness, because that could be their uniqueness. Mm-hmm. So how many of us have put ourselves in the position where we're not accepting who we are and how unique we are just to be part of something? Mm-hmm. We've kind of like hid ourselves and how we are just to be part of something. Like, okay, I call myself Jesus' hype man, but that's me, and that's how unique I am. That's my unique thing. But sometimes I used to hide that because I wanted to be accepted. But we can't do that because that doesn't make any sense. That's who I am. The fourth and final step is to stop putting expectations on yourself and on others. I think a lot of us do this right now. We go into friendships or relationships or whatever and be like, okay, so like they're pretty fine now, but like I just hope that they do this, or I expect them to do this. And we also put expectations on ourselves. Like, oh, I expect myself to try every day. I expect myself to get these amazing grades. And that just hurts us. And when we put those expectations on ourselves and when we put those expectations on others, they're most likely not going to fulfill them. We're not going to fulfill them. Because most of the time, because of this airbrush society that we have and because of how much we think into things, we can't actually fulfill the expectations that we have because they're fake and they're unrealistic. And I know that none of us are getting married at this point, but when you think about marriage, you're looking at them and you're like, okay, so I love you for who you are and not for who I think you should be. And I think that's not just in marriage. I think we should think about that all the time. I mean, we should not love people for who we think they should be. We should love them for who they actually are. So if someone is a Jesus hype man and you expect them to be a certain way and to fit in a certain way, then why would we do that? Because in that point, you don't actually love them. You just love what you think of them. And we have to just have better understanding for people. We just have to have that understanding, and we just have to know that they are them, and they are not you, and they are not like your expectations. And you can't put that on them, because if you do, they're never going to fulfill that, and you're just going to be let down, and then that's going to make situations worse. So the first step that I said was just to know that God already accepts us. He does. He already accepts us, and we don't have to ever do anything, not even a little thing, to be accepted by him, because he already accepts us just for being who we are. And the second step is to accept yourself. Because if you accept yourself, then who else could accept you? Everybody. Because you already accept yourself, so you're confident. And you know that God accepts you, and then you know that you accept you, and that is all you need. The third step is just to stop chasing after other people's uniqueness. Because we are unique in every way possible. And we have our own path and our own journey. And we just have to know that. The fourth step is to just stop putting expectations on others. Because we're going to be let down. And then also we can't put expectations on ourselves. Because then we won't be accepting ourselves. And if we don't do that, then we'll go down this rabbit hole of rejection. Overall, the way to defeat Goliath is to know that we live from acceptance, not for acceptance. So we live from the acceptance of God, and we live from that, and we're going through life like that, and we know that. But we don't live for that. We're not chasing after this acceptance from other people, No, we're not. We're not chasing after that. We're not living for that. We're living from acceptance. And I think that we really need to embrace that. When I was in middle school, I was a competitive dancer, and I loved it. Loved it. I still do to this day. I love dancing, and I want to get back into it. But in 6th grade year, this group of girls came in. And at first, I was like, oh my goodness, I just want to be part of this group. Like, they seemed all cool because they were like all friends, and I just wanted to be accepted by them. And 6th grade me was like, okay, I'll do anything. So like, I started coming to Fusion in 6th grade, which is what movement used to be called. And I started coming there in 6th grade, but then I wouldn't really come because I thought that they were going to reject me for that. And I didn't want to be rejected by them, so I just didn't go all the time, and if I did go, it was a secret. But then by the time I was in 8th grade, I was rejected by them, and I was the outcast. And I was almost bullied, every day, because I wouldn't do what they wanted me to do. Because at one point, I just realized, okay, yeah, no, I'm not just going to do everything you want me to do just because I want to be accepted. And since I loved competing so much, my parents actually ended up having to make the decision for me to stop dancing because I was not strong enough to do it. Because it was hurting me more than it was helping me, but I just wanted to stay there because at school I didn't have any friends because I was always at dance. So they were all that I kind of had. So 8th grade year, I stopped dancing. That summer was the worst summer of my life. I've never felt so much of an outcast. I had no friends, none. Think of that, not one. And then I started going to Southwest freshman year, and I sat on a rock for lunch alone for 2 weeks because I didn't know anybody, and then I also didn't want to be rejected again because I was just hurt by that. So I didn't want to be rejected, so I literally sat on a rock, on the ground for lunch because I didn't want to go into the lunchroom and realize that I wasn't accepted into any of those groups. But then, freshman year, I started coming back to movement. Best decision of my life. I met these girls up here in my small group, and I met Nate, and I met all these people here. And it was the best thing of my life. I was finally accepted. But it wasn't just that I was accepted by people. Because when I started going to movement, I realized that I was accepted by God and that He loved me. And I realized how much He loved me and that I really didn't have to do anything to do that. That was amazing. But that was the easy money part. That was easy. The hard part was accepting myself. And I actually didn't realize that I had to accept myself until July of this summer. July this summer, I was like, oh my goodness, I should really start accepting myself. Because I was still chasing after other people's acceptance. And yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to do these things. But if you work towards it, it's possible. Now I accept myself, and I know that God accepts me. And now I'm up here on my own uniqueness and my own path doing that. It's possible. So I'm going to pray us out in a second. But I just wanted to take some time to tell you about the stuff under your chairs. So under your chairs, there's a rope. And there is a tag with a rubber band on it. And just like last week, this is David's slingshot that he defeated Goliath with. And on this card today, we're going to write what God says about us when He looks at us. Because when we look in the mirror, like I said, I wanted you to remember what you were thinking. But when we look in the mirror, we think of all these bad things. But when God looks at us, and He looks at us all the time because we bring Him joy, what would He say? I feel like right now I'd write on this card that I'm just amazing, that I'm doing great, that my arms are not too long and that they can be used for something, and that I am accepted by Him, and that I'm loved, and that I should just love myself and stop being ridiculous. I think that's what He would say. And then you can just take these and keep them. So I'm just going to pray out. Thank you so much for listening. So first, I just want to say I pray a little differently. And before I spoke up here before, I didn't really pray like this because I wanted to be accepted, because this is kind of a unique way of praying. But this time I figured, why not? Just go for it because I'm talking about acceptance, so I should. So, woo! Yo, what's up, my boy JC? What you doing? So I just spoke to these wonderful people, and I think that they are amazing. And I know that you think that they are amazing, and I know that you can do great works through them, and I know that you love them no matter what. And I know that you love every single little unique thing about them, every single thing about them you love and you accept. And God, I just want you to remind us of that. I just want you to know that we love you. And I want you to remind us that you love us. Because we just start striving for that acceptance, and it's not really what we need to be striving for. We need to be striving for you, because you accept us already. And I pray all this in your wonderful and amazing name. Amen.
Amen.
So now I'm just going to give you some time to do the cards, like 1 to 2 minutes.